They think control comes from dominance, from louder words, from visible confidence, from the constant attempt to convince and explain. But real control begins the moment you stop trying to prove anything. The moment you understand that silence itself is a weapon, subtle, invisible, and far more dangerous than noise. When you stop reacting, people start questioning. They replay every word they said, searching for meaning in your calmness. They start wondering what you know, what you're planning, and why you're not affected. This is how the power dynamic quietly shifts, without you saying a single thing. Because silence breeds imagination, and imagination breeds fear. People cannot fight what they cannot define. They cannot attack what doesn't react. They can't manipulate what refuses to participate in the emotional game. That is where real control begins, in restraint, not in expression, in stillness, not in movement, in the discipline to watch rather than speak. The powerful do not rush to fill the void. They let others drown in it. The weak interpret silence as absence. The strong understand it as presence. Your calm is the proof that you are in command of yourself, and whoever controls themselves controls the room. There's a psychological law in every human interaction. People naturally follow the one who seems least emotionally disturbed. Your silence suggests you know something they don't. It implies confidence, certainty, and mystery. It makes them adjust their tone, second-guess their words, and reveal more than they intended. They will start performing for your approval without realizing it. They will start trying to decode you, when in reality you are already reading them. Control isn't about forcing outcomes, it's about influencing perception. And silence is perception's greatest sculptor. Every time you stay quiet, you invite projection. They fill in the blanks with their own fears, desires, and insecurities. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting them back to themselves. You are not hiding. You are revealing, not yourself, but them. The most strategic people in history understood this principle. Not because they were emotionless, but because they knew that power isn't loud. It's quiet enough to listen, to wait, to let others destroy their own position with unnecessary words. When you stop defending yourself, you make the other person responsible for their interpretation. They either assume you're confident or dangerous. Both work in your favor. And so, you learn to use silence not as an absence of communication, but as a language of dominance. It says, I am not desperate for your understanding. I am not in a hurry. I am not moved by your energy. I decide when to engage. The less you say, the more your presence expands, because people will always measure your power by how little you need to prove it. Have you ever noticed how the person who speaks the least in a group often commands the most attention? It's not because they're mysterious by nature. It's because humans crave certainty. And silence denies it. They lean in, they interpret, they anticipate. You become the gravitational center of the moment, pulling attention without effort. Every word you don't say becomes heavier than any sentence they could speak. Control, then, is not about having power over others. It's about mastering the impulses within yourself that seek validation. To control the game, you must stop playing it emotionally. You must learn to detach from the noise and watch how people expose themselves through it. They reveal their patterns, their fears, their hunger for recognition. And while they talk, you collect information. You understand motives, you read intentions, you guide outcomes silently. The moment you realize you don't have to react, you become unshakable. That's when you begin to see how predictable most people are. How easily they betray their own weakness through their need to be heard. Your silence becomes their test. Those who respect it are strong. Those who can't handle it reveal their fragility. And that's when you decide, without words, who deserves your presence. Because control is not about dominating everyone. It's about discerning who is worth engaging with. Most people will try to lure you into emotional debates, hoping to break your composure. But composure is the highest form of strength. It's the quiet crown of those who have nothing to prove. Let them underestimate your silence, and it's the sweetest advantage. The loud expose themselves, the quiet observe, the wise wait. The game is won not by the one who moves first, but by the one who moves last with precision. Power doesn't chase, it attracts. Silence turns your presence into a magnet because it forces others to wonder about your approval. And once they seek it, the game is already yours. You control it not through dominance, but through the subtle art of emotional discipline. That's why silence isn't emptiness. It's a statement, a declaration of internal control. The person who can sit in silence without discomfort can survive any psychological storm. You're not silent because you don't know what to say. You're silent because not everything deserves an answer. That is the hidden truth of control. You choose what gets your energy. You choose when to speak. You choose what to reveal. And in that choice lies your freedom. Words are commitments. Silence is power. The moment you understand that, the world becomes slower, clearer, and easier to read. You stop reacting to chaos, and chaos begins reacting to you. Because silence, when intentional, is not passive. It's strategic. It pulls people toward your rhythm. It dictates the pace of the conversation, the tone of the room, and the direction of attention. That is how the silent control the game, by setting the unspoken tempo that everyone unconsciously follows. The secret is patience, the discipline to not reveal your next move, the wisdom to know that control is not proven, it's felt. You never have to say you have power when people already feel it in your restraint. Silence becomes your aura, and composure your language. That's when you stop playing the game, Bess, and start defining it. Control isn't loud because truth never needs to shout. The world belongs to those who can watch chaos unfold and remain unshaken. Most people react because silence terrifies them. They equate it with weakness, with uncertainty, with not knowing what to do. But silence is the ultimate proof that you see more than others think you do. The one who stays quiet is not detached from the game. He is observing it from above. While others scramble to defend their egos, justify their worth, and explain their intentions, the silent one learns. Every reaction they show, every word they spill, every small emotion that escapes their control becomes data. Silence gives you that power, the power of the invisible observer. You stop being part of the storm and become the calm center that dictates its movement. You're no longer playing the game at their level, you're designing it. The beauty of silence is that it forces others to reveal what you would never have to ask. Their impatience betrays them. Their insecurity exposes them. They try to pull you into their emotional noise, but you stay still, and that stillness becomes unbearable to them. That's when they start explaining too much. That's when they start making mistakes. That's when you begin to win. Every psychological game has one rule. Whoever needs less controls more. The person who can stay silent in discomfort radiates power because silence implies self-sufficiency. You don't seek validation. You generate it. You don't chase understanding. You let them struggle to earn yours. That subtle reversal changes everything. Because people crave equilibrium in social dynamics. When someone refuses to speak, others instinctively try to fill the gap. They offer more, share more, reveal more, trying to balance the unspoken tension. That's when you collect leverage. Control doesn't come from manipulation. It comes from patience. The ability to let time do the talking while you remain unshaken. There's a moment when someone expects a reaction from you and it doesn't come. That moment rewires their perception of you. They start measuring their words differently. They speak softer. They approach you with caution. Your silence has just rewritten the social contract. They feel it, but can't name it. You've gained control not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. This is the silent psychology of dominance, the unspoken hierarchy formed by emotional restraint. You don't need to be the loudest in the room to be the most respected. You just need to be the one who doesn't flinch. And here's the paradox. The quieter you become, the more people talk about you. They'll interpret your silence as wisdom, arrogance, mystery, or strategy. They'll invent stories around you trying to make sense of your calm. You become a projection screen for their insecurities and desires. That's the secret power of not explaining yourself. Once you stop feeding people's curiosity, their minds start feeding it themselves. And the image they create of you is always larger, darker, and more powerful than the truth could ever be. Control the narrative by not participating in it. Let the world define you in whispers while you act in silence, because once you speak, you limit interpretation. But silence has infinite meanings and infinite power. When you master it, you become untouchable. People can argue with your words, but not with your calm. They can attack your actions, but not your composure. That's why silence is not avoidance. It's control disguised as indifference. You're not ignoring the world, you're guiding it without effort. You create pauses that force reflection. You shift attention from noise to gravity. Even in relationships, the same principle applies. The person who can walk away without drama owns the emotional field. Detachment is the highest form of influence because it proves you're not driven by need. In silence, you stop chasing what you cannot control. You start focusing on the only thing that matters, your own state. That is where true control begins. When you no longer crave to be understood, you become free. Because needing to explain is a form of dependence. The powerful have nothing to explain. Their presence is enough. That's what silence communicates. Certainty without evidence, strength without display, direction without command. It's the purest form of communication because it's not about convincing. It's about existing in your own rhythm. And people respect that rhythm because it's rare. In a world addicted to validation, composure is rebellion. They will either admire you or hate you, but both reactions confirm your impact. Silence makes you unforgettable. Every interaction you have becomes sharper because you don't waste energy on the unnecessary. You speak less but mean more. You observe more and know everything. You realize that control is not a performance and it's precision. You start choosing your moments like a master chess player. Not because you're afraid to lose, but because you understand the value of timing. Silence is that timing. It creates anticipation. It turns the ordinary into something heavy with meaning. People lean in, expecting a move, but the fact that you don't make it, that you can wait, that's what gives you power. Because most people can't. They panic in stillness. They rush to fill silence with excuses, explanations, and unnecessary confessions. You don't. You breathe. You observe. You decide when the noise ends and when your words begin. And when you finally do speak, your words cut through the room like precision tools, few, deliberate, unforgettable. The world mistakes control for dominance, but true control is mastery over your internal reactions. Once you own your silence, no one can use it against you. Once you understand that you don't have to answer every attack, every challenge, every emotion, you become untouchable. You're not cold, you're composed. You're not absent, you're selective. The less you respond, the more power you command, because the only true game worth winning is the one inside yourself. Control the noise within, and you'll control every room you enter. Power begins with the understanding that silence is not emptiness. It is space. Space to think, to observe, to let others reveal themselves. The world is full of people who speak before they understand, who react before they process, who confess before they calculate. But the silent one knows that every word has a cost. Once you release it, you cannot retrieve it. It becomes evidence, a signal, a trace of your inner state. So you learn to treat silence as currency. You spend it only when the value of speaking outweighs the strength of restraint. This is the first law of invisible control, to recognize that your silence shapes perception more than your words ever could. When you walk into a room and say nothing, people feel your presence before they hear your voice. They sense energy they can't categorize. They project power onto you because humans are addicted to explanation. And what they can't explain, they fear or admire. That's why the quiet always have an advantage. In silence, you manipulate time. Every pause you allow stretches the moment and forces others into discomfort. They start to rush, to fill the air, to overexpose themselves. You let them. Because silence gives you access to the deeper layers of truth, the one people reveal when they can't bear to wait. The longer they talk, the more they betray what's really driving them. And you, the silent observer, see patterns they don't even know they're showing. Their ego believes it's leading the conversation, but in reality, it's performing for your approval. You control the tempo. This is what most never understand. Silence is not passive. It's active direction. It dictates rhythm. You slow the world down to your pace. You decide when the energy moves, when it freezes, when it breaks. People with loud emotions don't realize how predictable they are. They think their intensity makes them powerful, but it only exposes their lack of control. Power doesn't announce itself. It lets others reveal theirs first. When you learn to resist the urge to prove, to justify, to explain, you become unreadable. And the unreadable are untouchable. No one can destroy what they cannot define. The moment they label you, they feel safe. But silence denies them that safety. It leaves them uncertain. And uncertainty breeds respect. They will say you're cold, distant, mysterious, or intimidating, and that's fine. Because power always feels cold to those who want warmth without earning it. Silence protects your energy from being diluted by unnecessary connections. You become selective by default. You begin to see how many people speak only to avoid confronting their own emptiness. But you've learned to live within that quiet. You've learned to find strength in it. You don't run from the silence. You grow within it. That's why your presence feels heavier. It's not arrogance. It's control. The kind that doesn't beg to be seen but cannot be ignored. You move differently when you stop needing to explain your worth. You stop chasing situations that require defense. You understand that most people aren't searching for truth. They're searching for validation. And silence refuses to give that. It holds a mirror instead. That mirror forces them to face themselves. Some will hate you for it. Others will admire you. Both are forms of influence. The game of control is not about being liked, it's about being undeniable. You don't compete for attention, you become the reference point. Because when everyone else talks, the one who doesn't becomes the contrast. The silence makes you visible through absence. You become what others orbit around, not because you demand it, but because your lack of noise makes theirs meaningless. To control the game, you must first control your image. And silence is the perfect sculptor of image, because it doesn't rely on defense. You let others build it for you. They talk, they guess, they exaggerate, and without realizing it, they make you larger than life. That's how myths are born, not from what you say, but from what you withhold. History remembers the few who said less because mystery multiplies impact. The world is drowning in words. Silence is the last luxury. It's the signal of someone who's not seeking permission to exist. It's the aura of those who already know their value. That's why silence commands attention, because it's rare. The masses shout to be heard, the powerful whisper by choice. They know that the quietest person in the room often owns the outcome, because they are not distracted by noise. They are listening for patterns, for weakness, for leverage. And when they finally move, it's decisive. That's the strategy. Patience as dominance, the discipline to wait until the right moment reveals itself. Most people mistake reaction for action, but you, by mastering silence, learn to reverse that. You act only when the noise has exhausted itself, when everyone has revealed their intentions, when the field is clear and the advantage is undeniable. That's how control feels, effortless, precise, calm. You're not competing, you're orchestrating, and those who rely on words to establish power will never understand this. Because words expose, but silence conceals. And what's concealed holds leverage. When you're silent, they try to guess. And when they guess, they reveal. You see, every move in human interaction is about energy. Silence is not the absence of energy. It's the concentration of it. It's the still water hiding immense depth beneath the surface. You become unreadable, not because you're empty, but because you contain more than others can perceive. That is what makes silence magnetic. People are drawn to what they can't decode. They feel your control without knowing its source. They sense your calm and mistake it for power, because it is. To control the game, you must first learn to control your silence. You must know when to use it as armor and when to use it as a weapon. Sometimes silence disarms, sometimes it provokes, sometimes it commands, but it always controls. Because in silence, you're not reacting to the world is reacting to you. Every powerful person eventually learns this truth. Control is not about domination, it is about direction. And silence is the purest form of direction there is. When you master it, you begin to see how most of humanity runs on impulse. Quick reactions, emotional outbursts, unfiltered thoughts. You realize that people speak because they are slaves to the moment. They need to fill the air to be understood, to feel significant. But you, when you choose silence, you step outside of that system. You no longer feed the noise, you manipulate it. You decide when the moment accelerates and when it pauses. The world bends to those who can hold stillness, in the face of chaos. You start to notice how easily you can control conversations by simply withholding your response. When someone expects anger and you give them calm, they lose their script. When they expect validation and you give them nothing, they begin to question themselves. When they expect an argument and you remain silent, they begin to reveal more than they should. The silence confuses them, and confusion breeds dependency. They start looking to you for cues, for when to speak, when to stop, when to act. That's when you own the rhythm of the interaction. Power is rhythm. The powerful move slower because they're not reacting. They're designing. You create gravity with your silence, you make others orbit your calm, and the longer you hold it, the stronger it becomes. But here lies the paradox. Silence only works when it comes from inner control, not from fear. The fearful are quiet because they're unsure. The powerful are quiet because they're certain. The energy behind your silence determines whether it commands respect or invites pity. The world can feel the difference. That's why true silence begins in the mind. It's not just the absence of words. It's the absence of internal chaos. When your thoughts become disciplined, your presence changes. You no longer carry the vibration of desperation. You no longer react to disrespect. You no longer explain to those committed to misunderstanding you. You simply observe, and that observation becomes unbearable to those addicted to noise. They will try to provoke you, to force a reaction. Because your silence exposes their lack of control, you become a mirror and they can't stand what they see. That's when they label you distant, arrogant, cold. But the truth is, they're describing what they fear, emotional independence. People don't fear power. They fear those who don't need them. Silence communicates exactly that, self-sufficiency. You're not looking for approval, because you already live from within your own validation. You no longer rely on others to reflect your worth back to you. You've taken control of the reflection itself. That's why you start to attract respect effortlessly. The same people who once questioned your quietness now adjust their tone around you. They weigh their words more carefully. They sense that your silence is not absence, but judgment, not emotional distance, but strategic detachment. And detachment is terrifying to the emotionally dependent, because they cannot control someone who doesn't react. That's the hidden dynamic of all social power. Whoever reacts least rules most. The one who can stay silent the longest always wins. Because silence stretches time, and in time, all masks fall. The impatient reveal their motives, the emotional expose their triggers, the undisciplined destroy their own position. Silence lets them do it. You simply wait. You let the truth unravel itself. The world believes that influence comes from action, but in reality it comes from restraint. Every time you hold your reaction, you multiply your influence. Every second of silence is a silent declaration. I am not like you. You move from being part of the noise to becoming the force that defines it. You are no longer in competition. You are observation itself. And the observer always controls the observed. That's why the most powerful leaders, negotiators, and thinkers in history mastered silence as a psychological tool. They knew that people rush to fill the void, and in doing so they surrender information. You can watch someone reveal their entire psychology simply by staying quiet. Their insecurities, their ego, their self-importance all spill out in the presence of your stillness. It's not magic, it's discipline. The kind of discipline that requires you to value clarity over comfort. Because silence is not always easy. It demands strength. It demands the ability to tolerate misunderstanding without needing to correct it, to be misread without needing to defend yourself, to lose the small battle of perception while winning the long war of influence. That's where most people fail. They crave immediate validation. They want to be seen as right, as kind, as strong. But power doesn't chase perception. It creates it. When you are silent, you let time sculpt your image for you. You don't defend your reputation. You let the weight of your presence do it. And over time, silence becomes proof of strength. Those who once doubted you begin to respect you. Those who tried to provoke you begin to fear you. Those who underestimated you begin to watch you carefully, uncertain of how much you know or how much you've planned. And that uncertainty is control. The game of power is psychological, not physical. It's about emotional endurance. Who can remain centered when everything around them seeks reaction? The one who can remain silent through it all has already won. Silence then becomes your unspoken language of power. You speak it through your posture, your gaze, your unhurried movements. You speak it through your ability to pause when others rush, through your refusal to explain, to overshare, to beg for understanding. Silence becomes your armor and your message. It says, I am not easily moved. I am not emotionally available to chaos. I am not here to entertain noise. I am here to observe, to understand, to decide. And in that decision lies the secret of control, not over others, but over yourself. Because the one who owns his silence owns his mind, and the one who owns his mind controls everything that follows. At the highest level of power, silence is no longer a tactic. It becomes your nature. You no longer choose when to be quiet. Quiet becomes who you are. You move through the world with the stillness of someone who has seen too much to react. The noise around you becomes background music, meaningless chatter that cannot touch your core. You stop needing to be understood, and that is when you become impossible to control. The world feeds on attention. It survives on reaction. Every argument, every trend, every outrage demands energy, and those who give it lose power. The ones who stay silent absorb it. You realize that control is not about dominating people. It's about conserving energy. It's about learning to stay centered while everyone else burns themselves out trying to be seen. You let them. You let them exhaust themselves in the noise. You let them talk, post, shout, and perform while you wait. Because silence is not withdrawal, it's strategy. It's the art of making others reveal themselves first. It's patience, weaponized. You stop chasing opportunities and start attracting them. You stop reacting to disrespect, because you know that energy spent defending yourself is energy stolen from your purpose. You begin to understand that every moment of silence increases your psychological gravity. People feel it. They feel the weight of your composure. They start calculating before speaking to you. They measure their words. They sense the boundaries you never have to announce. That's what true control looks like. Invisible borders drawn by quiet confidence. You no longer need to raise your voice to command respect. You simply exist in a state of certainty that others recognize instinctively. They know you cannot be manipulated because you cannot be provoked. They know you cannot be deceived because you are not distracted. Silence sharpens your perception. You start hearing what others miss, the hesitation in a tone, the insecurity behind a joke, the truth hidden between lines. You become a reader of human nature, and people reveal themselves effortlessly around you. The talkative expose themselves. The impulsive betray their motives. The insecure seek to impress you. All you need to do is stay still long enough to let their masks slip. That's the silent control. Not confrontation, but observation. You no longer seek to dominate through fear or charisma. You control through awareness. You see the emotional map of every interaction, and you move accordingly with precision and calm. Silence gives you that clarity. You begin to notice how often words distort truth, how people use language to hide rather than reveal, and so you withdraw from the need to talk. You communicate through essence, through what you are, not what you say. Every calm look, every measured pause, every moment you choose not to respond becomes a declaration of mastery. Silence stops being emptiness and turns into presence, a living energy that speaks louder than any argument. Those who truly know power understand that silence is the purest form of confidence. It says, I am not here to prove anything. The world may misunderstand this. They'll call you distant, mysterious, difficult to read. But all they're doing is admitting that they can't control you. And in the game of power, that's the ultimate victory. Not dominance, but independence. The ability to exist untouched by noise. You no longer chase explanations. You no longer explain your choices. You move like a shadow, unseen but always felt. You decide what deserves your attention and what does not. You decide when to speak and when to vanish. You learn that sometimes the greatest statement you can make is to say nothing at all, because silence cannot be quoted, cannot be twisted, cannot be used against you. It belongs entirely to you. That's why the most dangerous kind of person is the one who can remain silent while everyone else seeks validation. You are that person now. You are the one who listens more than you speak, who sees more than you reveal, who moves less, but affects more. You don't fight for control, you embody it. The game bends to you because you have detached from it. You control it because you no longer need to win it. You understand that every loud person eventually exposes themselves, and every reactive mind eventually destroys its own advantage. Silence survives them all. It endures. It outlasts everything that tries to provoke it. You've seen enough to know that true power is invisible. It doesn't demand recognition. It radiates authority quietly. It's not in how many people listen to you. It's in how deeply they feel your absence when you stop speaking. That's the moment they realize you were the center all along. The game continues, but you're no longer a player. You are the one who writes its rules by choosing when to engage. You've learned that the highest form of control is not about manipulating others. It's about mastering your own impulses. Once you've done that, no one can make you dance to their rhythm again. You set the tempo. You create the silence that others must adapt to. You become the void that defines the shape of every conversation. That's what it means to control the game without saying a word. It's not about being above others. It's about being beyond their reach. You have ascended from noise to stillness, from reaction to design, from effort to essence. You are the calm in the storm, the stillness that unnerves the restless, the unspoken force that guides every outcome. Silence is no longer your defense, it is your domain. You live there now, untouched, observing, deciding, creating. And the world, in all its chaos, still bends toward your quiet. Because silence isn't the absence of power. It's the proof of it. If this truth resonates, it's because you've already begun to wake up to your own power. Subscribe, because real power doesn't shout. It whispers.